Hello, welcome to PlayStation Access. My name's Rob, and welcome back to the Tuesday Checklist. Every week we take inspiration from a recent or upcoming release to spark a conversation about some of our favourite games. With the Devil May Cry HD collection recently out on PS4 and still being every bit as good as we remember, we decided to have a chat about games that simply never get old. I'll go first, because I also simply never get old.
So a game that I don't think will ever get old, and I think I will, if they just keep releasing it, I will keep playing this game.
Yeah.
The Devil May Cry, the original trilogy, specifically number 1 and number 3.
Right.
Specifically number 1.
Right.
Because I've never massively been into that type of game. I'm not very good at that type of game. But when it came out, I had a friend at school who played this and nothing but this. And was just like the biggest Devil May Cry evangelist you could get. And so he convinced me to play it. And I was like, oh wow, okay. This is very, very good.
Yeah.
Like you could tell it was the absolute kind of pinnacle of that genre at the time.
Yeah.
And I was about maybe 12, 13 when it came out. And it was the kind of game that's perfect for a 12 or 13 year old. Like everyone at school was like, oh, there's this guy called, this is a new game. And you go into, Game Station or wherever it was,
Yeah.
and it would be on the booth and everyone would be playing it whenever you went in.
Yeah.
And my friend Darren was like, oh, this cool guy called Dante, so cool, coolest character ever. And his guns are called like Ebony and Ivory. Oh, it's so cool, Ebony and Ivory. He's named his guns. Oh my god. And have you seen the bit where he gets the sword? Like he just levitates through it. And he's like, it's still really cool now. How he gets the sword just like, and Dante is just pinned to the floor like so violently, and he just stands up through the sword, and the hilt of the sword, they didn't get the collision quite right on the cutscene, goes through his face, like the hilt is massive, so goes through everything, and he just like pulls it out of himself, and he's got the Alastor sword, and it's great. The actual action in it was so. It allowed you to do things that were so outrageously cool that you felt like you were Neo in the Matrix. It was around that kind of time as well, when that kind of action was like amazing.
Yeah.
And I remember fighting a bunch of marionettes, and one of them threw their blade at me, and I'd done a kind of a jumping backflip to avoid the blade. Landed on the blade in midair, jumped off the blade.
That's cool.
Like jumped even higher and like got the Ebony and Ivory out and just done a cool little shooty combo and came down and slashed them up. And it was hard as nails as well. Like regularly the game would be like, would you like to play on easy mode? Would you like to try easy mode now? And eventually I said yes. After losing about 10 times to Phantom, who's like the first boss. Notoriously really difficult first boss. But it's just such a stylish, cool game, full of that kind of dialogue that was really kind of classic of Capcom games of that era. Like really knowingly trashy, but quite funny at the same time.
Right.
Like the boss would come in and Dante would be like, what a big surprise.
Oh,
and
nice.
it'd just be, just spouting nonsense at each other. But it really worked in that setting. Beautifully artistic and gothic atmosphere. And even now the gameplay really, really holds up as an action game. I don't think the original Devil May Cry, you probably think of games like Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising maybe, anything Platinum Games have made, but Devil May Cry is certainly up there for one of the best, if not the best, pure action games ever.
I feel like I'm cheating with my entry, but my entry's Tetris for games that will never get old.
I mean, it's really old.
I mean, it is really old, but
it's already old.
But it's also not old. Do you know what I mean? Because
Yeah.
I would play Tetris now. In fact, Dave, it reminded me of when we went to the COD Fan Fest a couple of years ago, and we found ourselves with Chris Bratt of the Eurogamer video team, who was telling me he was playing Tetris on the plane over. He was going to find like an arcade to go and play Tetris.
He'd recently found video games, hadn't he?
Yeah.
He was working his way from the beginning.
And his big highlight of the trip was that he got to number 11 on this arcade version of Tetris that we found in in a place called Barcade, I think it was called.
Yeah.
And he was playing it. He was telling me Tetris Friends was a big part of his life. And as much as I was, bullying Chris as much as I could on that trip for liking Tetris. He's definitely onto something.
Tetris is brilliant. What
It's
do you mean
amazing.
for liking Tetris.
Well, the getting to 11 on the scoreboard and being, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like top 11 isn't, you know what I mean?
You know, how many people live in LA, really?
I don't know.
Neither do I, but, maybe it's 11. Maybe it's 10, and he came along and,
just added his
he's
name
an
at the bottom.
outsider. Tetris is brilliant, and obviously all I can think about now is the song.
Yeah, I know.
Don't hum the song, Nate.
Because...
I don't know.
Is it song and tetraminos?
Once you start, you won't be able to stop. It's the
starts
Pringles of ear music.
That's true. Yeah. But I think there's something very basic about just wanting to put things together. Like, I'm not sure that it was the first vertical shape sorting game even, but it certainly has defined a genre which is going strong now with Puyo Puyo,
Yeah. So many different takes on Tetris.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you know what I think is the most clever thing about Tetris?
What's that?
I think it's the inclusion of the down button.
Right, to speed things up.
That's what always gets me, patience. I would be twice the Tetris player I am if they didn't have the down button. If I just had to wait for it to slowly tick down.
Yeah.
The number of times I think, yeah, that's lined up,
Let's
hit
do
down, and it's it's a square out or whatever.
Yeah.
And that comes back to haunt you.
Of
Those
course it does.
mistakes.
Yeah.
That's Tetris.
Tetris is about dealing with stuff and it eventually going wrong and overwhelming you. And I feel like that's very much more representative of my life. You know,
yeah.
I'm always trying to like today, this morning, I've been off work, just organising things in my bedroom, and that's been a job I've needed to do for years. 5 black bags came out of there. You know what I mean? That's like 5 rows that I've gotten rid of in Tetris.
Yeah.
But eventually the stuff will kill me.
Now my game's not especially old, but I don't think that's the point. The point is that it is as good today as it was then being, I don't know,
last week.
2012 was it? But it was brilliant then. And the game is Hotline Miami. The first Hotline Miami, which probably, I don't know, is responsible for the most hours spent on my PS Vita.
Yeah.
That they then also happily spent on PS3. It's an incredible game, and it's, I guess what it just does so perfectly well. The gameplay loop is so quick and satisfying and clever, and I just love it. And it's aesthetically pleasing. It's got an art style that is never going to go out of date. It's that kind of old style, it's pixel art, but it's really cool. Really cool in its 80s aesthetic, and it's got a great soundtrack, which is great.
Soundtrack is great.
Most of all, I mean, there's loads and loads of reasons why it's really good, but the thing that means that I think it's like addictive, it's so incredibly good, it's just that the instant restart. The instant again. It's just so clever, and that is something that only a few games do. But it is just an instant win for me anyway. Like if I enjoy the first level or whatever, and there's a restart button, I will enjoy every level forever to the point of going insane, because it just appeals to my perfectionist nature.
What's your favourite noise in Hotline Miami? I've got one in mind, obviously.
Have you?
Yeah.
Your
favourite thing that happens? What's your,
I think it's got to be throwing something. I really like opening a door on someone.
That's mine.
Is it?
Yeah.
When they go flat on the floor, you open it. I love that. I love the puzzle of it. It's so clever. Like you kind of, spend some time looking at a room. There's like 3 guys inside. One guy walks by the door. I'm going to open the door. I'm going to shoot that guy and then throw my gun at that guy. And then this guy, I'm going to cut his head off. Or, or some combination of that. Like,
what actually happens there is I miss with the door and then a dog jumps on me.
Yes, but I've instantly restarted and I don't mind. I don't give my brain the time to think, what, I'm sad. It's just like, no, let's go again. Let's be better. And it's such a fast-paced game as well, or it can be. Like, that's the real, I guess that's another bit of joy that it brings, is just that you can be really skillful at it. I guess I think you can be really good at that game. Like you can do enough to get by, but you can also be really stylish and clever and tactical and horrible, quite mean. It's just great. It's great on so many levels. It's the perfect game for PS Vita, and I just can't see how it will ever not be brilliant. I will always want to play it, and every time I play it, I always think it's good.
So for me, a game that will never get old is Worms.
Yes.
Now, you could apply this to the whole Worms franchise.
Right.
When I say Worms, I think specifically about Worms Armageddon,
Right.
because that's the one I spent the most time with probably.
Yeah.
And there's something about Worms that just makes it timeless in that you have it's 2D for a start, which really helps. I mean, you could look at the game and not know what decade it came from,
Yeah.
let alone which year. I mean, the artwork is really on point. It's really fantastic to look at. There's something about the voices as well that are really irritating, but kind of charming
Yes.
in a way. And obviously the weapon set, which has no real fixed time period. It sort of spans everything. I mean, you've got bananas flying around that explode quite heavily,
Yeah.
and you can't place that in a time area.
No.
And
From the
Sheep.
50s.
Yeah.
Banana bombs.
oh yeah,
from
the bananas
50s.
was from the 50s, yeah. And
Sheep. Exploding sheep.
I forgot about the sheep, yeah.
The donkey. Concrete
yeah.
donkey.
Concrete donkey, yeah. So I spent a lot of time playing it when I was at school, and me and my best friend would walk home from school together, go to our own houses, and then immediately just start playing Worms online together.
Right.
And we'd always play the same rules, which were infinite dynamite sticks,
Okay.
and then everything else was just set to normal. You had at least one of everything else.
Okay.
So the way this would transpire in the game is that you would start by using jetpacks to
Yeah.
fly over to the enemy worm,
Yeah.
drop a dynamite stick, fly away again.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a bit cheaty, but you do that until your jetpacks run out.
Right.
And then you'd have to try and do it with a rope,
Right.
which is
yeah.
a lot harder, because
Ninja rope.
I remember the ropes being really hard to control.
Yeah, they were.
Because you have to control like the y-axis as well as the
Yeah,
x-axis
you go
at
up
the
and
same
down,
time.
And you can also sort of swing on them. Kind
Yeah.
Of. When they get really short, it gets. I remember trying to get over little lips of cliff edges and stuff was just a nightmare.
Yeah. So we do that with the ropes, and then once the ropes had all been used up, we then just have to do it manually,
Right.
just by jumping up to each other really slowly,
Yeah.
just dropping a dynamite down, and then jumping away again.
The old double jump backwards somersault.
Yeah, that is a bit of a cheap move, really, isn't it? But
What?
you can do that. I can say confidently now that I would take on any of you at Worms and be successable.
Whoa, challenge accepted. This is great. I didn't know you felt like this, Dan. I'm very up for that. Dynamite, the best thing about it was you didn't ever want the worm to explode. You wanted the worm to fly off.
Yes, if you angled it right.
That's what you wanted. I never put it like right on the worm.
Yes.
I always wanted it to fly off into the sea.
Also, what would sometimes happen is the way the levels would sort of randomly generate, you would have worms that would be maybe cut off on the second level below,
Yeah.
and when the timer ran out, the water level starts to come up,
Yeah.
and you can just see these worms that can't do anything for a start because everyone else is on the top level,
Yeah.
and you just know they're going to die.
Yeah.
Eventually, there's nothing they can do about it.
Weird, isn't it?
If you can't jetpack out of there, you're just stuck.
A lot like real worms.
A lot like real worms.
Flooding must be a problem.
Yeah, try and get the rope out, just can't get it to stick, and then you're in the sea.
Yeah.
You just reminded me actually about how these games would normally end with the dynamite matches. We'd have the blowtorch that you could dig tunnels with.
Yeah.
So you sort of go, but rather than use them against each other, we'd use them to build our own little homes.
Okay.
So you'd sort of go diagonally down, then across,
Yeah.
and then put an iron girder,
Yeah.
like blocking the entrance to the hole. I think you got to lay like 4 girders in one go. So every time it was your go, you just put 4 more girders down.
My God.
That would make just a huge house
Yeah.
that would be quite difficult to penetrate.
Yeah.
So it'd just be survival of the longest lasting.
Patient.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was right.
Oh, please shut up. So there you go, our picks for games that simply never get old. Let us know your choices in the comments, give us a like if you enjoyed the video, and join us again next week for another Tuesday checklist.